We're looking today at comparing and ordering fractions and mixed numbers. We're going to start with the easiest way to understand what you're actually doing, and that is by comparing fractions and mixed numbers by drawing a picture. It's always just so much easier to visually see the value of those fractions and then determine which one is bigger and which one is the smaller one. So here on this picture you can see the red number line that's filled in is measuring 3/4. It starts at 0, goes to 1, it's broken up by fourths, and then we shade in 3 of them. The blue number line, again, is numbered from 0 to 1. This time it's broken up into thirds because the fraction is by thirds, and we shaded in 2 of those. So if you notice here, just looking at the colored in portion, you can easily see that the red line is longer than the blue line. Therefore, we can say that 3/4 is bigger than 2/3. The problem with doing it this way is not that it doesn't work, but that it takes so long to draw pictures. Every time you have to get a number line draw, or you could do it by a circle graph, but every time you're having to do this, you're having to draw a whole picture, break up the number line or the circle, and then fill things in. So it's not always convenient. So let's talk now about what to do without doing a picture. So we're going to use these steps to help us compare and order fractions and mixed numbers. Now here, for all of these numbers that we're going to look at in our example, they're all just fractions, but you would apply the exact same rules as if they were mixed numbers at the same time. So the first thing is to find a common denominator. We have to do that because we can't just compare apples and oranges. We've got to make them all be the exact same, then we can compare them. So the first thing we're going to have to do is find our least common denominator, or at least a common denominator. After that, we'll use that to make equivalent fractions. The third step is to then we would compare the numerators, and lastly is to write it in the original form. The last and fourth step really applies to ordering, not so much comparing. For comparing, we're just going to put the greater than or less than sign. So let's go ahead and look at this second example, 4/6 and 2/3, since that first example was done for us. So if I look over here at my denominators, I've got a 6 and a 3. They are not the same. So I'm going to try to find my equivalent, or my least common denominator, which we've talked about before. Looking at 6 and 3, my least common denominator is going to be 6. So I'm going to want to change the fractions so that they are broken up into 6 instead of 6 and thirds. Well, this first one is easy. It's still a 6, so therefore my numerator is still a 4. The second one, I'm going to try to think, well, what do I multiply 3 by to get 6? That would be 2. So I'm going to multiply 2 times 2, and I end up with 4. Looking at 4/6 on one side, 4/6 on the other side, we just compare our numerators, 4 and 4. Since those are equal, these fractions are also equal. Let's go down to 2/3 and 1/5. Let's get our common denominator, which would be 15. So I'm going to change both fractions to be in 15ths instead of thirds and fifths. Well, we multiply 3 times 5, so 2 times 5 is 10, so we've now changed this to 10/15ths. Multiply by 3, and 1 times 3 is 3, and we've changed this to 3/15ths. Let's compare our numerators, 10 and 3. Well, 10 is obviously larger than 3, therefore 2/3 is bigger than 1/5. My common denominator would be 8. Since this denominator is already 8, we can just leave it the same. Multiply by 2, so I've got 6. Now that my denominators are the same, we can just compare our numerators, 6 and 7. 7 is bigger, therefore 7/8 is bigger than 3/4. Last two. Common denominator would be an 8. I get to leave this as 5/8. Multiply by 4, multiply by 4. Just comparing the numerators, and obviously 5 is bigger than 4, therefore 5/8 is bigger than 1/2. And the last one, get a common denominator, it would be 6. Since this is already a 6, we can just leave that a 4, times 2 times 2. So again, we end up with 4/6 and 4/6, these are equal. We use the same rules that we do for comparing when we're doing our ordering. The difference is that we're going to have more than just 2 fractions. In these examples, I went ahead and added some mixed numbers, so that's why the whole number 1 looks a little different than the fraction. So in this first example, we want to put in order 1/2, 1 4/5, 7/10, and 3/4. We're going to apply the same rules as far as getting a common denominator first. So looking at all of our denominators, 2, 5, 10, and 4, the easiest way to do this is to pick your largest denominator, which in this case would be 10. Obviously, we can't make a 4 a 10, so I'm going to go up to the next multiple, 20. Well, I can make 2 a 20, 5 a 20, 10 a 20, and 4 a 20. So we now have our common denominator, which is going to be 20. So I'm going to change all 4 fractions with a denominator of 20. For the first one, we multiplied 2 by 10 to get 20. So this is 10. Don't forget that whole number that goes with that mixed number. We multiply 5 by 4 to get 20. So 4 times 4 is 16. 10 times 2, we'll multiply 7 by 2, and we get 14. Multiply 4 times 5 to get 20, so 3 times 5 is 15. Now we're going to look at our whole number, or our numerators. One thing to remember here is that we do have this mixed number. Since this is the only mixed number in our equations, or in our number sentence, that is obviously the largest right off the bat. That is going to be my 4th and biggest fraction. So I can even just ignore that the rest of the way. Let's look now at our numerators that we have left, the 10, the 14, and the 15. 10 is the smallest, therefore this is my first fraction. Next would be 14, that's my second, and lastly is my 15, and that would be my third. Now remember that last step says to rewrite the fractions in original form. So I'm not going to write 10/20ths, I'm going to write 1/2. And number 2, we're not going to do 14/20ths, but we're going to write 7/10. Number 3 would be 3/4. And then the last one is 1 4/5. And notice we just separate them with a comma. That's all that's needed there. And this last example, let's get our common denominator. So 12 is my largest. I'm going to see, can I make 6, 4, and 3 a 12? And I can. So that is going to be my common denominator. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite all 4 with the common denominator of 12. Don't forget the whole numbers that go with these two fractions. Let's go ahead and find our numerators. So 3 times 4 is 12, 2 times 4 is 8, 4 times 3 is 12, 3 times 1 is 3, 6 times 2 is 12, so I get 10. And then here I already have a 12, so I'm going to leave that. Now remember about our whole numbers. This time I've got 2. I've got 1 and 3/12, and I've got 1 and 11/12. So I'm going to start by just comparing those two right off the bat. Those are going to be your largest ones. Since both whole numbers are 1, let's compare our numerators again. 11 is bigger than 3, so 1 and 11/12 is my largest fraction, or my 4th spot, leaving 1 and 3/12 as my next one. Now let's compare our numerators of just our proper fractions. The smallest one would be 8/12, and then the next would be 10/12. And the last step is to rewrite this in order from least to greatest in the original form. So my smallest fraction here was the 8/12, but we're going to write it the original way, which was 2/3. My second was 5/6. My third is 1 1/4. And the last is 1 11/12. And we have put these in order now from least to greatest.